Good morning, everybody. Delighted to be able to welcome you today to the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum. It is the follow-up to the most popular show um, for learning and development and technology in the UK. Uh, Wonderful to have you all here. A bit of a surprise because you got me instead of Don Taylor. Don has internet problems today. Who knew that we would have technical problems when we're dealing with learning technologies? It's almost as if. Who knew? But I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to the session today. I'm Andrew Jacobs. I'm host some of the Learning Technologies webinars, and I'm also chairing some of the sessions that are running over the Autumn Forum over the next 4 days. As I said, delighted to have everybody here, and so many of you here. Please do say hi in the chat. We do look out for your chat comments, and please make sure you ask your questions in the comments as well. I know there will be questions relating to this session today. And that's because we've got just such a smart speaker with us. Delighted to have Egle Vinoutskyter with us. Egle is Director and Learning Strategist at Nodes, the Learning Innovation Studio. And Egle's been working with Don, looking at the use of AI in the learning and development space, and specifically what that means for us right now in L&D. Egle, delighted to have you here, and just really trying to find out and pin down what we mean by this. The real challenge isn't the tech. I'd love to know what that's about. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thanks for the warm welcome. Yeah, the real challenge isn't the tech, isn't that a good teaser? So let's get straight into it. Where are we with AI? And based on our, meaning mine and Don's, survey of 420 people, we have a bit of an 80-20 situation. Granted, there might be a self-selection bias in a sample, but generally speaking, the absolute majority of L&D professionals seem to be using AI in some shape or form. Don't worry here. We are going to dig deeper into this. This is what this session is about. This is what I'm going to be talking about and walking you through exactly what's going on in the industry and where we go to from here. I have been working in this AI and L&D space for a long while now, and it is a very complex topic, yet the most common question I get is still, what are the others doing? So let's start here. Half a year ago, Don and I did another survey of more than 300 L&D professionals, but I would say that its results are still representative, so that's what I'm going to share with you. We asked them, how are you using AI in your work? And do you have any guesses about the top 3 AI use cases in L&D? I'm sure I'm not going to surprise any of you with these figures that actually learning design, content creation, and researching subject matter tasks were the top 3 AI use cases in L&D. Which again is not surprising because content creation is generative AI's natural capability, and it also happens to be L&D's most resource-intensive task. So you put 2 and 2 together, and this is what we get. Now, we have heard a lot of talk about SBOs, skills-based organizations, and data-informed decision-making in the past few years at conferences on LinkedIn. So we were interested, where are they? And the answer is that they are at the bottom. And of course, we have some use cases, other use cases in the middle, things like admin tasks, personalization, translation, some user research. But before we go into all of that, let's look into the most popular AI uses and see what's going on there. Now, this is what a usual learning experience design, or LXD, process looks like. It usually roughly has 4 parts. We have discovery, we have learning strategy and design, we have delivery, where we create everything that needs to be created, live, digital, whatever, and we have the follow-up stage, which includes evaluation and iteration on the design. And based on our survey from a year ago, the use of AI looks something like this. We have very little going on in discovery, a big uptick in strategy and design, most of the firepower, unsurprisingly, in delivery, aka content creation, and frankly, tumbleweed in follow-up. This year's survey, however, showed a slight change. While learning design and content development are still the most popular uses of AI, we have more going on in discovery, which I'm going to talk about later, and in follow-up. In fact, out of 300 responses last year, only 4 mentioned using AI for anything following the release of a course, learning experience, whatnot. So we've completed it, it's out there in the open, and that's it. This year, however, we had 44. So the change from 4 to 44 responses, open entry responses, explaining how they're using AI once the course has been released. And we saw more changes year on year as well. So the first one is that between 24 this year, the survey that we ran a few months ago, and this time in 2023, we have more data analysis. We now see AI being used for data analysis at 3 levels: to analyze learner feedback on a course, to analyze the usage of learning systems, and even in some cases to tap into company level data to better understand the audience and their needs. So market data, competitive data, demographic data in the company. And while still in its early stages, I think that this is a powerful indicator of what might be made possible by AI. The other change we have observed is that trust in content differs. While content development is undeniably the #1 use case of AI and L&D, the respondents seem to be split into 2 camps. We have one group that uses AI to develop big chunks of course content, of scripts, sometimes even entire modules, while the other group regards AI as a tool to overcome the blank page syndrome. When you're starting from scratch, that writer's block, and create perhaps a first draft, which they then extensively modify and build on. And many respondents noted that they don't trust the quality of AI outputs, and that using it without extensive human involvement has proven impossible. So we have this bit of a split in the industry in terms of how our fellow learning professionals regard AI-generated content and what it can do in our learning design process. The third change year on year is this emergence of co-creation for learning design. And this is my personal favorite, because last year, learning designers extensively reported using AI for such tasks as brainstorming learning activities, creating high-level course outlines, or writing quiz questions. And while these are still very popular use cases, many also described using AI as a co-creator, as a co-pilot for learning design of sorts, almost a colleague in a small, often one-person learning team. And they would ask AI to be perhaps a sounding board, a thought partner for ideas, for designs, throwing these around, which is a distinctly new use case for this year. And finally, another change is the fact that this year we are using a lot more custom tools. So ChatGPT may still be king, but L&D professionals and learning designers in particular are increasingly using custom tools for specific tasks. They're using image, they're using video, they're using audio creation and editing tools, as well as conversational bots much more widely in comparison to last year, with some teams even creating their own GPTs as well. Now, let's get into specifics, which is how we're using AI at each step of the learning process. So here we have AI-enabled discovery. And one of the top uses is self-onboarding. And here, I mean, once you get a brief that, okay, we need to create content training, whatever, some sort of learning thing on a topic, this is about using AI to gather information on the topic, including explanations of concepts and exploring different angles. So it's not just, okay, tell me about negotiation, tell me about feedback, whatever, that sort of thing. It is more about, and this is something that was detailed in our survey, which is, okay, so give me this information that I need to know, and then talk me through some objections. Help me understand how this works exactly. So going into a lot more detail to get a deeper, more nuanced understanding of this topic that is required for training. The second one is content ideation, which is quite self-explanatory. It is about soliciting a content outline and subtopics, especially for unfamiliar topics for learning designers. Filling in the gaps in existing content when SMEs are unavailable, again, solving this problem of sometimes you just don't have access or cannot get SMEs on board quickly enough and you need to start moving. So this is where AI comes in. Sourcing materials, which is, this is not about content research. This is actually about using AI to help you find the resources and tools that you can provide to your learners, to your end users. So it is about saying that, okay, so what kind of tools, apps, whatever, would be helpful in this situation as part of this program? What kind of reads can I suggest to my learners? So things like that. And finally, analysis. And this is about analyzing the source content received from subject matter experts, received from internal and external clients, from research interviews. And note that this is using AI for user search, not for content research anymore. So it's really interesting that this has started happening this year. Now, on AI-enabled strategy and design, there are some common learning design tasks that are very popular and a lot of people are using them. So the first one is creating learning objectives and a high-level course outline. This is table stakes, something that a lot of designers do. The second one is creating quiz questions, so formative, summative, pretty much creating the questions and creating these various types of feedback that you can put into the question, into the authoring tool. Rapid storyboarding, again, self-explanatory, and brainstorming. And here some interesting things are happening because this is such a versatile use case. It is more about what you prompt AI to help you with rather than just pure brainstorming. So often people ask AI to help them brainstorm and create learning activities that they can use with the end users. For example, creating example scenarios according to parameters that you can later analyze either in the classroom or e-learning or whatnot. Finding case studies, so putting in parameters such as I'm looking for a case study from this industry that can showcase this, concept or this kind of change, that sort of thing. Suggest to me a few actual real life case studies that might be helpful. Of course, you need to double check that everything is correct because sometimes AI might invent them. But this really helps people rather than just going around the office asking if does any case study come to mind. It's also used to create role plays and practice exercises for both in-person and for digital learning. So it's both for branching scenarios, but it can also be used for actual people in the classroom, right? And as I said, we have this new use case of using AI for co-creation, of using AI as a thought partner. So here specifically, it might be asking AI to review a course outline that you, a human learning designer, wrote in line with adult learning theories, evidence-based practice. So pretty much, this is what I have. Can you blow holes in it? Let's see how it withstands scrutiny, right? The other one is asking AI to point out any missing steps in your learning design process. Did I skip something? Should I have spoken with someone? Should I have reviewed something to make sure that this is ready to ship? So I'm thinking of approaching this project from that angle. Do you think that's a good idea? What I can do better? So things like that. So it's more of a process focus as well, not just the design focus. And of course, using AI in conversation to explore ideas and possible learning strategies for a particular audience that you're working with, which is I think it's really quite useful, because we all know that learning departments are quite small. Sometimes you have a single person working on a project, so it's really good to have this second opinion in the room. And finally, another thing that we're seeing this year used much more widely is using AI for live training, because AI is now extensively used to facilitate live training, and not just purely digital e-learning. So a lot of facilitators are using AI to create a workshop structure, to create the framing of the workshop, the key messages that they need to drive. So again, it's part of the live session learning design process. They're using AI to generate ideas for icebreakers, for team building activities, for the things like breakout room prompts, and role play scenarios as well, as I mentioned before. And of course, drafting presenter notes and facilitation guides for sessions, which is something that a lot of people find quite painful. So now AI might help you with that as well. And some people are also using AI, but often a different third-party tool, so not one of these generic generative AI tools, to build slide decks as well, because there are some tools right now where you can input your like rough skeleton, and that it can create slides for you.
Awesome. I wanted to jump in very quickly, Egle, just to pick up on some of the questions and the comments that are coming through. Absolutely fascinating. The feedback in the room is outstanding. Just some of the questions. We've got some questions to do with accessibility, but one question that has come up is, which I think is quite reasonable, is as part of the 20% who've never used AI for L&D, where do people start? What tools do people use? Is there a best practice place to start? I mean, where do people go? Do they just dive in, or what's the the way to start?
Oh, so there is a short answer and there is a longer answer, which would be much more useful for a lot of people. So within that 20%, we actually have something like, I don't remember off the top, but something like 5% who do not intend to use AI, and the remaining like 15 or so percent that are planning to use AI but haven't started. So I guess for them, that's the more relevant question. In short, I think making friends with AI, actually overcoming that. You know what? Let me pedal back a bit. People start their interaction, their relationship with AI from three perspectives. You can either be afraid of it, you can be excited about it, or you are indifferent. So it depends where you are with it. So that already, like the first step, it might be, I might say to you that, okay, so just experiment with tools, see what they can do. yes, that works for people who are excited, and that might work for people who are indifferent. But for people who are afraid, you need to start before that, and you need to perhaps, for example, if it's not for your personal use, but in a business setting, to have a conversation, an all hands meeting, that this is what we're planning to do with AI, and despite what it can do, we are also not planning to get rid of your job. So things like that. So there's starting from where people are. And then, of course, the first step is taking stock of where you are in the organization. So a lot of people, actually, there's this shadow AI use where people are using AI despite there being perhaps it being prohibited in the organization or not explicitly allowed. So there's a lot of R&D at the individual level already happening in the organization. So I would say the first step is that, yes, get to know the AI tools, but also, if you're working in a team, understand what kind of research, for lack of a better word, has been done, what kind of tools you have access to, because there are AI functionality in a lot of tools, the learning tools and not learning tools, like outside of learning, that already have AI. Yeah. So you may not need to invest that much. And actually, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, because that is, as I said, there's a way to answer this topic in a very detailed way. But in my second paper, which I'm going to link to, actually, there's a whole page of the steps that you can take from zero to somewhere.
Fabulous. It just really just framing the context for some people, because we've got some people here who have never used it. So for them, looking at some of the stuff we're doing, it's going to be way beyond. So it's just to try and help them get a sense of it, which is really useful. Thank you so much. Apologies for interrupting.
No worries. It's quite surreal, because I'm not seeing anything. I'm not getting any feedback. So it's always nice to know that it's just not me sitting in my room. Okay, moving on to AI-enabled delivery. We have a lot of things with text happening here. So we have content writing, copy editing, proofreading, and doing that both for course content, for scripts, for resources, so any kind of one-pagers that you're creating for people, for instructions. So even say in a course, how do you guide people through it, the instructional text. Course introductions, which everyone hates writing, because that's something you do once you've done the good part and the interesting part. Writing key takeaways, writing descriptions of things, even things like, for example, for accessibility purposes, alt text, so things like that. There's also a lot of creating first drafts and content samples that people like using for when they're trying to pitch, both for external and internal clients. You're trying to bring your vision to life. So using AI to just draft things, create a sample that you can show to, so you don't have to explain that much. People can immediately get what you're doing, right? Also, rewriting content to heed word limits, to write in a certain format, to rewrite things in a certain tone of voice, like, for example, go from stale to more conversational, right? So if you have some legacy material that you need to freshen up. Simplifying, which is simplifying technical, jargon-heavy text to be accessible to people who may not be that well versed in the topic. And of course, summarizing, synthesizing. So you have a long document, you need to extract key ideas, you don't have a day to go through it. You use AI for that. Translation is another, it's perhaps such a simple use, which has spread like wildfire, especially in enterprise level organizations, because it unlocks such scale and speed to deploy any kind of learning experience in 10 languages, which is something that would take months before. And finally, using AI for multimedia, which is generating images, which, yeah, like, we know about that. But one thing that's that's new this year perhaps is image editing. So not just generating images, but I have already some images, I want to edit them using third-party tools like Canva AI, like Adobe Firefly. Then we have audio. where we're creating synthetic voiceovers, both for scripts and for e-learning. And we are creating video. So with video, last year we had a lot of talking heads. So the avatar-based video creation tools. Multilingual, a lot of organizations find that they take a lot of heavy lifting off of video creation. However, this year we also see a lot more using AI for animation and video editing, using AI-driven tools. So it's not just talking heads videos, it is actually putting together some stock images, some overlays, so something that looks really quite polished, done by someone who has no idea how to use any kind of video tools. And finally, generating transcripts and captions as well. And finally, moving on to follow-up, we have two things going on here. The by far most popular thing that's happening, that was pretty much not happening last year, but a lot of responses indicated that they're doing this year, is running a sentiment analysis on feedback survey responses and suggesting improvements to training programs. So you have 400, 500 feedback responses from your survey that you run after completing a program. And then you just feed it to AI and ask, okay, so what are the key sentiments? How are people feeling? What questions are coming up? And with all of that in mind, how can I improve this so that it's better next time, right? And the other one with follow-up is just like this umbrella of L&D analytics. So things like tracking and analysis of user progress, usage patterns of digital learning tools, and analyzing KPIs, assessing L&D effectiveness, producing reports, so that kind of stuff. And of course, that's just learning design. There are many more use cases of AI. As I just talked about extensively, learning design and content, but we also have personalization, the different type of AI, not generative AI necessarily, although it can be used for that. But for years, we have had adaptive learning. We had content curation in L&D tools. We also now can use generative AI to create tailored feedback, so it doesn't have to be canned, right? So that's personalizing in a certain way as well. We have skills practice, which is something that I'm super excited about, because instead of giving people a branching scenario, instead of giving people content, which we know does not build skills, we can actually create a pretty simple sandbox for people to practice a skill. And then we have, of course, simulations, we have coaching. So there's this entire market that's coming up in learning tech. We also have data analysis, so analyzing user research, understanding impacts, so doing any kind of qualitative and quantitative analysis. We can use AI for performance support, which is not necessarily to learn a thing, but to help unblock people so that they can move on with their work. And finally, we have this skills management, skills intelligence, creating career pathways based on what skills do we have in the organization, what we need, what the person needs, and so on, enabling internal mobility, this umbrella of use cases. And when I started thinking about how often L&D is using AI in these ways, I ended up with a scale that I like to call the AI and L&D complexity scale. We have simple AI use cases on the left and sophisticated use cases on the right. And I define simple as instances where L&D can use AI autonomously without having to interact with the rest of the business. And sophisticated, on the other hand, are uses where L&D needs extra skills, technology, and relationships to make them happen. And if we had an honest look at how L&D is using AI in reality, it would actually look something like this. Whoops. Sorry, my yeah, your AirPod fell out. Anyway, so we have this inverse S-curve, and why is it like that? And I would say that from speaking with loads of organizations for my research and my advisory work, I have a theory. See, to create learning content, a lonely learning designer working by themselves could use their own free ChatGPT account and actually, if they know what they're doing, get quite far, circumventing the need to ask for resources, for permission, to go through this process of new technology adoption. So pretty much L&D, or a single person within L&D, can get quite far with the first two use cases on the scale. But each step to the right requires L&D to acquire the resource, skills, or relationships to make these use cases happen. For example, personalization, it's not rocket science, but you probably need a third-party vendor software to actually have some adaptive learning, content curation, things like that. With skills practice, again, you need at least two things. First, you need either the resource to acquire a skills practice bot or someone who likes to tinker in your team to build one for you. And crucially, note the difference that, for example, with learning design, you're using AI internally. No one sees it. You are in full control of what comes out of L&D. Now, with skills practice, this is user-facing. You're putting these bots that are generating text in real time for each person individually in front of the end user. You're not in control of the output fully. And that means that there needs to be a rollout, perhaps a pilot, then collecting feedback, then rolling it out to a bigger group of people. So it is a process. It's not as easy as, okay, we have AI tomorrow, but by tomorrow we are going to have the content that we need, right? With data analysis, you again need two things. First, you need the relationships with the rest of the business where you get the data from. Of course, you need the data infrastructure that generates that data in the first place. And you also need someone in your team who can analyze the data and work with AI to make sense of that data. And then you have performance support, skills management, which are more advanced use cases. And in that, a lot of the time, it's not L&D that decides to adopt the technology to enable them. For example, a Copilot it's a great performance support tool, but it's not L&D's decision to use it. And for example, for any kind of skills intelligence platforms, that's usually, again, it comes from the top. The business decides that, okay, this is our strategy, and this is how L&D can enable it. And L&D is a key stakeholder, but it is not the key decision maker. And so that is the gist of the complexity scale. And I still think that this scale describes the situation with AI and L&D quite correctly. It is not wrong. And as I watched organizations using the complexity scale as frankly, a bingo card, trying to pinpoint which areas of AI they are operating at, I try to better understand what determines where they are on the scale. And to that extent, I'd like to draw your attention to two things. The shaded blue gradient is the first one. This gradient makes it seem that there is a smooth transition from left to right. That if you just put more effort, you'll keep moving towards the right. That if you spend just enough time with, say, AI for content, it will give you what you need to advance further. Unfortunately, Don and I found no evidence of that in our latest paper. The other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is this one little word on this graphic, relationships. They are really important, and you'll soon see why. Now, if there isn't something that drives the transition automatically, the transition from left to right, how do L&D departments move from left to right? And the answer is in the key adoption enablers. Let's have a look. The first one is basic AI readiness, which includes AI skills. It includes exposure, inspiration. It includes the use cases, kind of related to the question earlier. So yes, you need to know how to use AI. You need to know how other people are using it, because AI doesn't come with a manual. You need to find your own use cases. You need to experiment. You need some inspiration to, get you somewhere, so you don't just reinvent the wheel. And we talk about that a lot. We talk about how to use AI tools, where you can use them. And in fact, our report details many of these AI use cases. And I don't know if if Don has returned, but if he has, Don, perhaps you can post the link in the chat where I created a handy one-pager summary. And Don is not there, just remind me, and I'll post it for you, where I just collated all of the key use cases on a single page. But basic AI readiness is not the only enabler. And as I said before, there is a ceiling to how much it can unlock for you. The other enabler is what we call open AI. Open LND, sorry. Been thinking about AI too much. Open LND is essentially the type of forward-thinking LND that challenges the norms, that focuses on enabling performance and uses content production as a means to a goal, not the goal in itself. Crucially, Open LND's leadership is in tune and in conversation with the rest of the business. And finally, the third enabler is business readiness. Does the business even have an AI strategy? What are they trying to do with it? Have they given you the mandate to experiment with AI and LND? Have they allocated time and money for it? Do they have the data infrastructure that's necessary for more advanced use of AI? And do they have a culture where innovation can foster, that encourages risk-taking instead of punishing it, that encourages experimentation that is essential for innovation? With that in mind, let's revisit the scale from before. We still have the same scale from simple to sophisticated, but the gradient is gone now. We don't assume a gradual transition from left to right. And instead of listing each AI use case, we have clustered them into domains. The first domain is internal efficiency. This is where we use AI to gain efficiencies in admin, operational, or content development tasks. And I want to be clear that I'm not knocking using AI for efficiencies. You can achieve a lot here, and even the most advanced AI L&D organizations use AI to achieve efficiencies as a baseline. All I want to point out here is that you using more AI in this domain won't help you move towards the other more sophisticated domains. The second domain is point solutions. This is where L&D meets with the business to solve a discrete business problem. For example, the business needs to sell better, so L&D deploys conversational AI for scalable sales simulations. Or people spend too much time in onboarding, so L&D uses AI to deliver what new joiners need to know, but do it in the flow of work, right? So that you don't lose that time. And finally, the last domain is business integration. This is where L&D works in support of the business strategy at the highest level. For example, it uses AI-driven skills intelligence to support the employee experience through the entire employee lifecycle. And it is important to know that it is not the tool, but how it's used that determines which domain you're operating in. For example, AI-driven learning design tools can be used for internal efficiencies, or they can be used as part of a point solution. Same with skills taxonomies. Yes, that's quite an advanced use of AI, but it doesn't automatically qualify as an example of business integration if you just create it but don't do anything with it and just collects dust, right? And then you need to redo it again half a year later. Note how there are no arrows that lead you from one domain to the other. That's by design. because it's enablers and not arrows that move you between domains. What are these enablers? To achieve internal efficiency, you need AI-savvy practitioners, what we talked about on the previous slide with skills, exposure to AI, and your own use cases. You also need a focus on L&D optimization. And actually, this is like this domain is where a lot of L&D organizations are, or they are rapidly moving towards. Now, for point solutions, the enablers are different. You need an open L&D department on one side and a performance-focused business champion on the other. In other words, you need L&D that works with the business to identify a clear performance need that they can use AI to solve. It's about going outside of L&D, not just working on L&D's internal processes. And finally, for business integration, you once again need an open L&D department, of course, but you also need the business to be ready for change, to be ready to use AI at that level. Otherwise, it's going to be a very hard, if not impossible, sell. And this is what we call the immaturity model. Why maturity? For one, because it doesn't work like your regular maturity model with natural progression. And second, because from what we have observed, there is a real danger of L&D focusing only on content and becoming trapped and immature on sophisticated uses of AI, using it only to boost the efficiency of the training department. So, where are we heading in the near future? You know, when I was putting together the session description, which was before we finalized the maturity model, I really hoped that I would be able to give you a neat little scale and say that we are here, and in the next 3 months, we're moving there. Alas, that was not meant to be. And I respect you too much to pretend that I know for sure where we are going, but I'm sensing that we have a fork in the road kind of situation. Depending on where your L&D department is in the immaturity model, it might be that you're headed towards a tough conversation. If you've been using AI purely to gain efficiencies in the last 6, 12, maybe even 18 months, the business might start asking questions such as, if you can do things fast and cheap, why should we give you more money? You might need to start thinking about how to justify your budget, given all of these increasing efficiencies, sometimes double-digit efficiencies, and what you're using all of that additional time for. The reality is that generative AI has made the value of content plummet, and so will the value of L&D if it ties itself to content. The other option is that the near future brings you the opportunity to seize the moment. AI is arguably a once-in-a-decade, maybe even a once-in-a-generation kind of technology, and L&D is uniquely positioned to help the business take advantage of it. So are you going to be part of that transition? No matter where you are, to wrap things up, I'd like to share a few lessons from organizations at various stages of AI adoption. The first one is start with a problem. It's a classic, but it's a classic for a reason. I often get asked, how can I tell which AI tools I should use? There are so many, I'm so overwhelmed. And that's the answer. Start with the problem that you're trying to solve. Because if you're not clear on that, you will be overwhelmed. AI can be used in infinite ways. But if you start with a problem, gimmicky quasi-AI or good AI that just isn't suitable for your situation will quickly reveal itself. The second lesson is know what good looks like. Even if AI can create hours of video content for you, you still need to know what a good, engaging video looks like and in what context it should be used. There are plenty of tools that claim that they will create upskilling from your PDF, but you absolutely still need to know how people learn, how people engage, and what good upskilling looks like. So don't devalue or even lose that knowledge in your team while chasing efficiencies. And finally, augment, not automate. It's all too tempting to use AI to automate some of your least favorite work away. But what we have learned is that AI is good at tasks and not jobs. Automation often just ends up creating an additional work stream for QA, and using it like that might damage people's trust in AI just as they are beginning to adopt it because of the sometimes poor output that comes out of trying to automate rather than augment. So the lesson is augment instead of automating. For best results, use AI for discrete tasks and work in tandem with it. And I'd like to leave you with a reminder, once again, that AI adoption is not just a technology problem. Yes, technology is necessary, but it is not sufficient. It's important for L&D to look beyond technology and consider its own ways of working and what its value proposition is. And it's also important to understand the organizational environment that you're operating in and see how you can make the most out of the situation you're in. Thank you. You can follow me on LinkedIn if you're into what you just heard in the session. I also have a monthly newsletter with a very simple concept: one thought, one quote, one read, trying to reduce the noise about learning, using AI for learning in future of work rather than add to it. And the reports that I mentioned are in this link as well, knows.work/reports. You'll find the latest report that came out last week. You'll also find a previous report that details how to get started with AI as well, so to address the question. And that's it. That's me. Thank you.
I love it. That's me, she says. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Awesome. Donna's been doing a sterling job in the background. He's got some internet access, and so he's been pasting links into the previous report and so on. We have a load of questions, Egle. The biggest, the question that picked up, so Mike Linsel's asked this one, which I think is a fabulous question, is: can you foresee a tipping point where AI capabilities outstrip conventional team members in ability and cost, and how do we prepare? How should L&D directors prepare their teams for those things that AI will be doing?
That's the question, isn't it? The short answer. The short answer is yes, I do. Unfortunately,
yeah,
it is getting there. And I think this is why it's important to not devalue the expertise that we have and to not suddenly think that, okay, so I now have this AI video creation tool, and therefore we don't need a video editor because we have this AI, because this is how it begins to unravel. So I think that so I guess that was a long question. So yes, I think there is a tipping point, and it's not very far away. What can we do with it? How we can prepare for it? At an individual level, you really need to get good at what you're doing, because if you are average or below average, and it's really quite sad, because this is quite a dire situation for people who are entering the job market and they don't have the expertise that they can use to compete with AI, to guide with AI, to make the most of AI. It's a bit of a situation that we'll be trying to solve in the coming years, I think. The other thing is to look at what your future job is going to look like. It might be that it is going to change fundamentally. For example, there's an argument to be made that what we now call learning design and content development might become a lot of QA, or it might become much more analytical, just like what happened with marketing when it moved from being very designy, very artsy, to essentially just Excel. So keep an eye on that. Horizon scanning is the answer.
Yeah. The thank you. I think there's another issue as well, which is a lot of these tools are now consumer led now, and so we're in a situation where people are going to bypass the learning function and do the stuff for themselves anyway. And that, I think, is a big issue, where we're gonna fall into obsolescence just by not engaging with some of these tools. And I think that's a challenge that we have as well. second question, I love this question as well. So this came from Lisa Beecham. If we're using AI tools, should we state that we've been using AI tools? So if we're using them for content or for some of the analysis and so on, should we be citing the fact that we're using these technologies?
There are two answers to that. I think ultimately we don't have a best practice now. We haven't agreed as a society or as the workforce how we are approaching this. It might be something that you want to be regulated at the company level. So, this is how we are using these tools and this is how we declare them. However, I think there's also a very strong argument to be made. IP aside, if you work with something that requires IP, obviously that's a different question. But in your day-to-day work, I think there's an argument to be made. Like, if you work in finance, do you need to declare that you're using Excel? So if you work in content development, do you need to declare that you're using AI to write, proofread, whatever? Would you tell people that you're using Grammarly before sending out an email? So that's a twofold answer.
I think that's interesting. That's a really interesting point, as much as anything else, because, like you say, at what point do we have to declare it? There's also the whole ethical question and so on as well. So, which I know people have been throwing around for a while. Let me have a look. Another question. Yeah, so this one's just come in from Leo. Any examples of using AI to finally connect L&D, internal comms, and knowledge management? Because it does feel like they're a little bit disparate at the moment. Have you got any experience or heard anything about connecting L&D outside of L&D with comms and with knowledge management?
What do you mean specifically? Sort of creating a knowledge base or facilitating communication, a collaboration with comms? What is this specifically about?
I'm guessing that's what it is. I think it's the danger is, excuse me, that those services potentially we're quite siloed. L&D, comms, and knowledge management tend to be quite siloed. Have you seen anything where we're breaking down some of those silos and working potentially in a more collaborative or more cooperative way?
Yeah. So without naming specific tools, and I would also caution there that perhaps asking what tool can help me do this is not quite the right approach, because you might have to string together several tools, or you might find a tool that is kind of doing what you needed to do, but you need to have a chat with the vendor and say that, it doesn't quite work like we want it to work. Can you do a little something? So that's an option. Again, start with a problem, not the tool, not what kind of tool can do this for me necessarily. But in terms of knowledge management in general, AI, there are some AI tools that do knowledge management. Essentially, you enable it, you plug it into various knowledge bases within your company, and then you can use your usual chat interface to retrieve that knowledge, to combine it, to work with it, to collaborate on it. So yeah, there are tools that do that, but you need to know specifically, much like with any software, what your specific requirements are.
Yeah. And again, it's like you said, it's not about the tools necessarily. It's about the beyond the tools. It's you have to start building those relationships beforehand. The tool isn't just going to magic it and make it happen. There was a great debate in the chat over this question. So this came from Helen Marshall, who's in the next session. Interested in why you chose immaturity model over maturity model. It looks like a maturity model, but you've labeled it immaturity. Is there any reason for calling it that?
Yes, because a maturity model shows a progression. Usually in a maturity model, you have, say, you're here, and then there's an arrow, you get there, basic skill level, intermediate, expert, or organization, which is, all of these, say, L&D maturity models. You're here, but if you suddenly do this, you're going to get there. And pretty much if you do enough of something, you will eventually get to that from beginner to expert. And the reason we chose to call it the maturity model, because specifically we could not find a transition. The problem we were trying to solve, or the answer we were trying to find, was why are organizations 2 years in not moving? Why are they stuck? If you remember the inverse S curve, why are they just not making the jump? And jump is a key word here, I think, because you don't just gradually move. It's not inevitable. It's not an escalator. You actually have to make a jump, which is you change the way L&D sees its purpose. You change, or the organization change how it sees its L&D, and then you access the other use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Small steps, and then there's one big step, and to make that one big step requires more than just a natural progression. I get that. Last question we've got. So this one's come from Don directly. So talking about the case studies. So the report has 6 case studies. What do you think we can learn from them?
Each case study happens to have lessons learned, which are more specific to the case studies. Some things, like general lessons learned from the case studies, is that you can use AI quite successfully for a point solution, for a task that really helps you get some capability, and you can use it as part of the organizational strategy and use it in many places and see how you orchestrate them coming together. So there is no one way to use AI. Again, it's not an LMS implementation where one organization does this, there is a process, and this is how you do it. So that's one. Another thing is that I think one thread that we have through the for the case studies is how they are in these implementations of AI featured in the case studies. They are weaving AI as part of either the learning offering or if it's about a point solution within that solution, so that it's not purely AI. So it's always this integration that's working in tandem. And the final thing, which is, I guess, a higher level observation that you may not notice in the case studies, is the fact that there is a reason we got the case studies from these organizations. Finding and sourcing these case studies was very difficult. And the case studies that we actually ended up featuring, they are from organizations where necessarily L&D was part of the strategic team, AI steering committee, or whatever. So there was already that relationship established. And this is something that's not pointed out directly, but keep in mind that to make these case studies happen in real life, that was the component. Otherwise, organizations that didn't have anything to share.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Egle. That was outstanding. Please, if you thought that was useful, please put it in the chat. Loads of comments and questions from people asking if they can have the slides. Loads of people saying, can they watch the recording again? Because everybody that I can see was really fascinated by that. Thank you again so much, Egle. We'll be back at 11:30, where we have Helen Marshall and Beck Ford sponsoring a session sponsored by Thrive, looking at modern L&D predictions for 2025 and beyond. We know AI is going to be part of it, but it's got to be more than that, surely. And that's what we're going to find out in the next session. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.